matters. Let me see you move.
Love never felt so good. Can't I die if it ever could? Not like you. Oh.
Hi, everybody, and welcome aboard to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Ribsey. Isn't it something to smile about? Yes. The Anniston City Schools no longer on the failing list. But what exactly does that mean? And so now, where does the Anniston City Schools go from here? Joining me to discuss the trajectory of the Anniston City Schools, the superintendent of the school system, Darren Dothert, will be joining me, and we'll hear from him. And also, we'll hear from State Superintendent Dr. Tommy Bice. Join us when we come right back. Hello, everyone, and welcome aboard to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Ribsey. You know, when schools are on the failing list, it's certainly nothing to smile about. But when they are removed from that list, you know, it takes a village. Joining me to talk about that accomplishment of the Anniston City Schools is the superintendent of the school system, Darren Dothert. So welcome aboard, Mr. Dothert, and welcome back.
Thank you for having me again. Thank you for having me.
It's
been a while.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what it takes to get on your preferred guest list.
Well, you know, you're only back because you've done, you know, such an amazing job. And I know it's not just you alone. I know you would want to take all the credit.
No, in fact, I take no credit for getting off that list. Those teachers and the staff there and the principals, well, Ms. Garrick and her assistant principal, Mr. Howard, they deserve all the credit, along with the students. They did the work to get off. And
that's what I mean by, too, it takes a village, you know.
That's right.
It's not like somebody just walked into Calhoun County, walked into Anniston, waved a magic wand, and said, hey, you're off now.
I wish it were that easy. I'd look a lot better if it were that easy. It's not that simple, though. But we did do some things, some of the small things, incrementally that got us to the point where we could get ourselves off that list.
And before we talk about that too, I want to go back a minute, Darren, because I want people to understand. I want our viewing audience to understand that that's an amazing feat, because from what I understand, now this is just me talking, I'm not an educator in that sense in the public schools, but I understand that once you're on that list, that it takes a while to really kind of filter through, to really just get off, if you will.
Well, I'd agree with that in a sense. I think this would have been, if we were on this list, it would have been our 4th year in a row being on it. And what happens, though, is that the state provides some support of guiding you off the list. Now, they don't give us teacher units, they don't give us a lot of money, but they provide us some professional development and some motivation to understand the need to get off that list. And ultimately, over the 4 years of getting that support, we're able to see our way off the list, and we're thankful for that.
Darren, look, I wanted to read something here. This is something I pulled up last night. It says that one of the factors, as defined by the Alabama State Department of Education, of a failing school system is one that have tested in the bottom 6% of the state in reading and math for at least 3 of the previous 6 years. I mean,
let me help you with failing schools list first. Let me just help you generally with that.
Right.
I've stated before, and I'll state right here for you, there's nothing about any school in the world that I would ever label as failing. I mean, needs improvement, caution, alert. Those are the words you would want to, you would soften the word up a little.
Yeah, that's what they have
failing
out there.
doesn't, failing does not work for me. And I want the legislators to know that. I want anyone who believes in a failing schools list to know that. And if they want to know why I feel this way, they just need to give me a call. My number is available to anyone. But I attended a school near here. You know, I went to Ohatchee.
Right.
And if anyone were to label Ohatchee failing, despite the fact that I graduated in 1983, I would be so bothered by that. Because what it does is it labels everybody in the school, the teachers, the students, the custodian, the CNP staff,
to say it's failing.
That doesn't work for me.
Failing.
It flies.
But here's the thing, Darren. I mean, and I want to bring up a full screen here. When I looked last night, I said, let me just look out of curiosity to see who else What other schools are on there? I looked last night and saw over 75 schools, and they had it listed as on the failing list. And I was absolutely, I mean, and so many schools from Jefferson County, so many schools from Mobile County, Montgomery County, and they had them up there. Failing list.
But a lot of what these schools have in common, and I know you probably have read this, is that you're dealing with minority student bodies, 80+% black student bodies in urban settings.
Yeah.
And what ultimately we've done with the failing schools list is distinguish between the haves and the have-nots.
And the have-nots.
That's something we've been doing for years in terms of the way state assessment works. However, we've taken it to a new level by establishing a failing schools list. And I'm not going to keep beating the failing schools list.
Right,
I'm going to just say that I don't agree with it.
Right.
And at some point, if you're going to distinguish a school as failing, also help them out with funding that will allow them to compete with the schools in their area, and get themselves to a place where everybody's being properly educated, or educated according to some standards that are set by the state. And what I mean by that is, if you establish a school as failing, give them a few more teacher units, give them another administrative unit, give them all of their textbook supplies, give them all of the money that's been cut over the last 6 or 8 years from the budget. Do not just establish that they're on the failing list and then walk away from them after you've tainted them, after you've made people in the community feel that there's no way I should send my kids there. That was the impact that being on the failing schools list for Anderson Middle had on our system. You had parents who were there. My son went to Anderson Middle when it was on the failing schools list. And it only took one walkthrough for me to realize that there's nothing about the school that's failing. You walk in there right now, it's as structured as any middle school you'll find in Calhoun County or any state.
Or any other school in the country.
That's right. You walk through there, you'll think you're in there by yourself. That's how well they're taking care of business in terms of making sure the environment is conducive for learning. And but the fact is, we just need to work with the schools, give them the help and guidance that they need, give them a little more finances, because we know that Anderson City, in terms of financing, does not have the money to put some of the resources in place that every other school system has.
And resources do matter. When we come back, we've got to go to break now to Darren, but you know what? We're going to hear from Dr. Tommy Bice, the state superintendent, when we come back, because that's exactly, you know, you're saying you're pretty much in line with what he's going to talk about, and that's resources. You've got to have the resources in the school system. So we'll be right back with more Local Matters. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimsey, and I'm joined with the superintendent of the Anniston City Schools, Darren Dompert, and we've been sitting here talking all morning long about the great accomplishment that the Anniston Middle School has reached here of recent, and that is being removed from the failing school list. Now, when we first started out,
can y'all cue the applause? Isn't this where y'all cue the applause?
I wish we would. This is when sometimes I really do wish that we had a really viewing audience, because that's when we would hear the hooray, hooray, hooray. And I would probably say we would hear 3 claps and a snap for that, for coming off the failing list. But you know what? We were talking because Darren says, and I agree with you, you don't really like to hear that word being used, failing list, because it gives the impression that everybody in the school is failing, the teachers, the students, nothing's being done.
Well, imagine being in a classroom where the teacher's passing out the test that was taken the day before, and the teacher has marked your paper with a big F.
With a big, I used to couldn't stand to see
big red
that.
F.
Yes.
And so somehow the kids see your F, and everybody else made an A, B, or a C. Can you imagine what you would feel like?
And you do.
Because somebody's in the classroom inevitably is going to say, Dottie made an F.
Yes.
And anytime you get an F, anytime you're marked as a failure, it's hard to erase that.
It is hard to erase
that whole idea that you was once considered a failure. And with schools, the dynamic is so serious that people will remember this forever. And it's just not a good thing for the perception.
No, it's not, you know, and I am an educator
That's right.
at Jacksonville State University, and I never put an F per se on a student's
Sure.
paper. And so they may not have scored as high as I would have wanted them to.
Yeah.
But I like to do is point out their strengths. This is where you've done well. This is really your strong point here.
Sure.
But I would like to see you do a little bit better in this area. And so I'm glad that we're talking about this right now because, you know, Dr. Tommy Bice was here. He's the state superintendent. He was here in Calhoun County earlier this week.
Yeah.
And he went and found his way and made his way up to Piedmont. And I want to listen in what Dr. Tommy
Okay.
Bice had to say about the Piedmont City Schools. Let's go ahead.
So
and
many
take
of the things we saw today could never be captured in a single test score. So we want to make sure that when we do begin to evaluate teachers differently, and of course teachers need to be held accountable for making sure that students learn, that we don't base that on just one test score, that there are multiple measures of determining whether kids are learning or progressing or not.
Now you see that even Dr. Tommy Bice agreed with exactly what you mentioned as well as myself. You can't determine an overall school success off of a one test score. They're doing a lot of amazing things
That's right.
in Piedmont.
That's right. Well, primarily for Piedmont, and I have to applaud Matt Aiken for the work he's done there. When you engage kids on a high level, you can put yourself in a place where, yes, people flock to see what you're doing and how you're doing it. They're engaging kids as early as pre-K with technology. They are providing personalized learning opportunities, and I have to say I've been fortunate to have traveled with Matt to get an understanding. He and I traveled out to San Jose to take in a personalized learning conference, and thereby me in my case, I'm peeking in at Piedmont, and I'll steal from anyone.
Right.
And I picked up the phone,
Sure.
I called Matt and said, hey, we need to be moving toward the innovative stance you all have taken with teaching and learning. He says, well, why don't you come to San Jose? And I went out there with him to
Yes.
kind of understand what we need to be doing in terms of using technology to provide a learning management system for the kids we serve. It's something we're working on. It's something that's going to hopefully put us in a place where we never have to worry about not doing well on state assessments or not putting our kids in a place where they are college or career ready. So Matt Aiken is doing a lot of good things. But back to Dr. Bice. Dr. Bice is primarily saying if you use state assessment and state assessment only, you're going to make a mistake. There are a lot of other things that are going on that will help determine the
Yes.
possibilities of success for a child. And I can use my own life as an example for what Dr. Bice is saying. If someone had tested me in reading in first grade, they would have determined that I could not read well. Well, if you go to my home and you realize that there's not a library of books at my home because of poverty, then you know why I wasn't reading well. I could not open my gift of being able to read well until 4th or 5th grade because I was so far behind my peers. So Dr. Bice is saying, take a peek at the lifestyle for the kids, take a peek at a lot of different pieces of the puzzle prior to determining the success, the possibilities of success for a child. Because the fact is, everyone doesn't open their gifts at the same time.
That is so true. And you do have to have the gifts, as you mentioned, available. Now,
That's
when we
right.
were growing up, of course, technology was nowhere around. The
That's
big
right.
thing for us learning, and I was fortunate enough, looking back now, I didn't realize it then,
Yes.
to have encyclopedias in the home. That was
Most
a
definitely.
big
That's how I
thing.
learned to read.
Yeah, I remember, and my aunt, she used to sell encyclopedias.
Yes.
So, of course, she sold a really nice, beautiful set to my dad.
Sure.
And I remember my mom opening those cycles. She didn't work. And that's how I learned to read, from looking at the encyclopedia.
Sure.
You have to have the resources.
Must have the resources, and you know, I don't make excuses about not having resources. I intend to take what I have, what we currently get, and use it to the best of our ability. That means us taking care of the money we do get, being good stewards of the money, because I think that a lot of people will point fingers and they say, you're already throwing money at the problem. Well, we're not throwing money at the problem. It's easy to determine who is throwing money at it, but ultimately we're going to take the money we get and do our very best with it. And then hopefully as time moves forward, we'll continue to get some resources as we've already done that will level the playing field.
Because that's what I want to talk about when we come. We're going to break again, of course.
right.
I want to talk about that. Where do we go from here now, Anderson City Schools? Because you know, there's an old saying: if you don't continue to keep pressing forth, you could find yourself right back on that list again, and we don't want that. So we want to talk about where do we go from here when we come back.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimsey, joined this morning with the Anniston City Schools Superintendent, Darren Dothert. We've been sitting here all morning long talking about the great accomplishment that Anniston Middle School is no longer on, and I know he doesn't like to hear that word, as it's been quoted even by the State Department, that these schools are all on the failing list. But we're no longer on there. So
That's right.
3 claps and a
Hallelujah.
snap for that. Okay, and if I had an audience out here, I would make sure I would hold up the applause card and go, yay! But since we don't have that, I'll do it. So welcome back, guys. So we've been talking about all of the great things that that means that we're not on the failing list anymore. Yes. And you know what? We've got to make sure that we continue to work really hard so that we know we can't rest on our laurels now.
That's
because
right.
you know, if you rest on your laurels and get complacent and say, okay, that's it, okay, we could easily find ourselves right back there again.
That's right.
So now, Darren, first of all, give us a little bit of specifics. What did it take? What did you guys do exactly to kind of get off the list?
Fortunately, when I came in, there was an opportunity that I had, and this was one of the key things, because leadership is very important to progress, to change, good change anyway. So fortunately, when I came in, there was an opportunity to get a new principal at the middle school. The previous principal retired, and so an opportunity fell in my lap to find a principal who could take us from where we were at the point that I came in 2 years ago.
2 years
to
ago
where
already?
where
Wow.
we needed to be. So anytime you get that opportunity, you have to make the best of it. So
So it's, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm thinking it's only been 2 years now.
2 years, yes.
Wow,
It feels like
2
10.
years.
It feels
Yeah.
like 10, but
You've
it's
done
just
a lot.
it's been
You've
2.
done, yeah, 2 years.
But so Kim Garrett was a principal at Constantine Elementary, and I was fortunate to have been able to spend a little time before I had to make this decision and look around. And something struck me about Miss Garrett, and part of what struck me was she is very methodical, very meticulous. She was very structured, and of course those are things you need in a middle school. And I had to talk her into just applying for the job, but because she was a little nervous about it, and often you get people who are not sure about an opportunity. But so new leadership was what was the first piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
The next thing was setting expectation for your teachers.
That's
you have
right.
people who've been there a long time, and you're right, they get complacent. They lean back in their chair, and they fail to understand that middle school kids require constant engagement. You have to get up, take your desk out and put it in the hall, because you need to be paying close attention to everything that's happening, making sure that the kids who need individualized teaching opportunity are getting that.
Right.
So Ms. Garrick and I help increase the expectations, or share and motivate the teachers toward the expectations that are necessary in that school.
Okay.
And then beyond that, you start focusing on the students. If they don't get to the school, you can't help them. There are a lot of attendance issues, and I'm thankful that Yolanda McCants, our school improvement coordinator, really helped me with that. We gave the principals some incentives for improving the attendance rates, and the attendance rates started improving.
Once you get them there,
from 1 9 weeks to the next. Those little things count, getting the kids there on time.
And Darren, I understand what I've understood. You have a team that actually goes out and knock on doors.
That's right.
And
We
go,
will
hi, I'm
make
Dottie.
house calls.
I'm looking for Susie.
We will make house calls. We ramped up our efforts to ensure that parents knew we were serious about attendance. And we didn't do it alone. We have Grant Hockman with the juvenile probation's office, and they helped us send that message. We had an attendance summit. We do that every year now. And again, I give that credit to Yolanda McCants. Everybody in Anniston City knows that we mean business about attendance. I pass that off based upon the fact that I never missed a day. If you're not there,
Yeah, I used to
you
love
cannot
those.
learn.
That's right.
And then you throw all that together with the curriculum director. We hired Laura Phillips to assist us with curriculum.
Okay.
She is not just curriculum that she assists us with.
Now,
She
Laura
also-
Phillips, is she from here, from Anniston?
She is from Anniston.
Okay.
She was at Donahoe when I lured her away to Anniston
Yes,
City.
yes, okay.
However, she was a part of the Anniston family previously because we taught together at Anniston High School, and then she
Mm-hmm. Okay.
became a principal, and then ultimately she moved away to Donahoe to work there.
Okay.
But I lured her back, and she's helped us with not just the curriculum, but also with professional development. If the teachers are not continually learning, something's wrong. And so when you throw all those pieces together, then you can get yourself to a place where progress
And
is
you're
guaranteed.
right. I mean, and a teacher is a lifelong learning position.
If you're not, we don't want you. Don't
should,
apply.
You should never be going home every day, every night, going home and going to bed. And
That's right.
And then, because I'm up now, and I'm a new educator,
That's
in
right.
in the Jacksonville State University, and
Yes.
I'm up now, and I'm like, wow,
You have to
this
be
is
a-
a lot of work. I'm up now, looking and reading, and you're continuously
In
learning.
this business, you learn something every day. Even the superintendent learns something every day. Sometimes I can learn it from a kindergarten student.
Yes.
And that's, we want educators who are
So
continually
Darren,
learning.
where are we going from here now? We're moving on now.
Well, where
are
we're
we
going now is that, and I guaranteed to the city council, I was in a city council meeting last week, I guaranteed to them that we would not land on this failing schools list again. So I'm putting pressure on myself, and in return I have to put pressure on the principal and the assistant principal and the
Yes.
teachers. But we're not trying to stay off the list. We're trying to ensure to the public that we're educating kids on a high level, and if we focus on that goal and stay with it, we won't have to worry about the failing schools
Yeah,
list.
you won't have to worry about being on that list
No.
again.
No.
Just focus on where you're going right now. Keep improving.
That's
Keep
right.
doing well.
That's right.
Well, this again. I just can't say it enough that this is a great accomplishment. And so often, and I wanted to have you on soon while it's still relevant, because so often bad news gets all the attention in
That's
the
right.
world. And a lot of times when good things happen, I don't know why, it just seems to be, oh yeah, they did well, hoo. And it just one go in one ear out the other. And I
Yeah.
want to make sure that it took a lot of people to make this
A
happen.
lot of people, and I probably didn't thank everyone that
Yes.
needed to be thanked, but CNP, the custodial staff, the bus drivers, everyone at that school played a role in helping them get off that failing schools list.
Okay.
And we're thankful for it, but you ain't seen nothing yet.
But you say you ain't seen nothing yet. All right, and we hopefully that you will say, and I'm going to say to you, you ain't seen nothing yet, because we're going to be back each week with more Local Matters, because it's all about you. You matter. So we'll see you back here next week with more Local Matters.